Hey guys, Pete the Great, and today I'll be talking about One Piece chapter 892, sorry, that dropped this week. And for me personally, it was a really great chapter. I mean, we finally have, well, Sanji's done with the cake, and he rushed and got back with the crew, which means that all that's pretty much left is uh, Luffy arriving at Coco Island and finally meeting up with the rest of the crew and then bailing out. Now, as we see later in this chapter, it's not going to be as easy as it seems. So, the chapter starts off with, basically Big Mom still looming over the Thousand Sunny with that big ass fireball that is Prometheus. And we see that she smells the cake and she's like, what sweet fragrance. And she's not in attack mode anymore. She's kind of thinking about getting at the cake. Then we see that, Beige's ship that we knew was transporting the cake. We see Sanji like swooning over Nami, thinking, "Oh, I'm about to save you." Da, da, da. And then we hear that Capone is planning on making Big Mom eat the cake, and then proceed with the assassination plan. Which, in my humble opinion, I don't think he's actually going to do that. I think he just said that to Sanji to keep up the impression, but I honestly think that he's just doing it because he owes Sanji a favor, and his wife, Lola's sister, I forgot her name for a second, Chiffon, wants to pay them back, and as we see later in this chapter, they're basically gonna end up being the bait. And Nami and the others actually mentioned it, like they're being the bait. Why are they being so nice? Because when Sanji gets to the ship, he says something along the lines of, "Oh, they're gonna move the cake and let her eat it on some other island," and that's to Nami and the crew. They're like, "Oh, that's weird, but hey, I ain't complaining." Then we see brother Perospero, who is hesitant as to what to do. Because he's like, "Oh shit, Beige is involved. The cake must be poisoned. They're gonna try and kill Big Mom, and if they kill Big Mom, it's over. And if we don't let Big Mom eat it, it's over too." But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, "There's another reason why you're hesitant." I mean, this guy literally said, "Oh, the Straw Hats have the cake." Turns out he's a liar because Beige has the cake. Who knows? Maybe he dies, but like Beige has the cake, and if by misfortune he's the one that is stopping her from eating the cake, she'll turn all her anger towards him and he'll die. So he doesn't know what to do. So he's hesitating, and what he decides is half of the fleet will pursue Beige and Big Mom and try and figure out what to do with Beige and tell him like, "Hey, the cake's poisoned." And the other half, being led by Smoothie, will continue pursuing the Straw Hats. And I thought that was really good because finally, maybe we'll see Smoothie actually do something, and we get introduced to like her two, sisters, like real sisters, I think, because they're all long leg tribes, and like they're probably close in age, and they're probably like kind of like Katakuri and Oven and Daifuku. I think they're like the equivalent, maybe not as strong as those two. Maybe the two sisters are not as strong as Daifuku and Oven, but you know, they're like kind of like how Katakuri is stronger than Smoothie, but like keeping that balance and power. But we get introduced to them, and we see that they're going to be the ones pursuing the Strats. And finally, Beige calls Perospero, and he says, "Yo, this is Beige." And then Perospero's like, "You bastard!" And then he says, "Yo, leave Big Mom to us, man. We'll deal with it." So Perospero is even more convinced that Beige is actually planning something. So he pursues them even more relentlessly. And then we see basically what's happening at Coco Island. First of all, Sanji says, "Okay, we're 3 hours away, but it's gonna be hard. All we're missing is Luffy." So then we're like, "Okay, let's see what Luffy's doing." And we see that even if they get to Coco Island, they're going to be in deep shit. Because they've got Smoothie pursuing them. Then they've got all those ships surrounding Coco Island that we see in this chapter. That means they'll be stuck in between, waiting for Luffy to get there because they don't know if he's gonna be there at 1 a.m. and they have no ways of communicating with him because the mirrors are all broken. And then we see something even crazier. There's only one mirror left. One mirror left on the whole island. That's what they're trying to do. Why they're trying to do that? To make sure that if Luffy even wins the fight, like, he has no chance in their minds, but if there's even, like, you know, just a tiny like chance, they don't want to take no chances, so they're leaving one mirror and they're surrounding it with troops, and they're telling people, like, if you don't break your mirrors, we'll throw you in the ocean and take you back after a week. I'm like, bro, you'll be dead. Why would you do? But anyways, and what we see is that even if Luffy wins against Katakuri, he's going to be in some shit because there's a lot of commanders from the army that beat him after he beat Cracker. They're there. So I don't know how he's going to do it. And that's what I was thinking when I read the chapter. And then we get to Luffy and Katakuri, which is pretty much like the last 2 or 3 pages of the chapter. We see Katakuri starting to think, oh my god, Luffy is really, if this fight continues, he might even catch up to me. So he's like, I don't want to take any chances. So we see, like, okay, Katakuri, at first it seemed like he was bored with the fight and was just trying to get it over with because he wanted, well, first of all, because he wanted to eat, and then because Luffy was annoying him. But now it actually feels like he thinks that if this fight drags on too much, Luffy might kind of close the gap. So he's like, I gotta end this now. And he jumps up in the air. I think Luffy kind of saw it coming, or either that, or he was dodging an attack from somebody else, and he tried to dodge it, and the trident of Katakuri seemingly pierces through his body, and then we see he's wailing. He's like, ah! He's yelling, and what we see is the girl that was introduced the chapter before. We see her kind of cackling as if she had something to do with Luffy being impaled. So I think personally that, well, I mean, we don't know her power, and maybe she intervened. Because Luffy was kind of like dodging it, but it was like a weird dodge. Like, you see his body, you saw like all the images of him dodging, and it looked kind of blurry. So I don't want to assume anything, but at first I thought it was his future sight, that he was seeing that it was too late and that he was gonna die, or that he was gonna get impaled. But then the more I thought about it, the more I think it has to do with that last panel of just the smile of the Katakuri fan club president, or whatever it is she is, whatever's her title. So yeah, what do I think about Luffy being impaled in this week's chapter? I think it's about time that Luffy really meets an opponent that, you know, is capable of challenging him, but at the same time, it just goes to show that it's a big step. Maybe Luffy has ways to go. Maybe, you know, by the end of the fight, they say he'll be at his level, but I feel like it'll be kind of more like a Mr. One Zoro situation. You know, like, you could say, yeah, Zoro kind of can tussle with Mr. One, but does that mean that, you know, not that he's his level, but does that mean that he can fight with other people from that tier? You don't know until he trains, as he's done right after, saying, I need to train so that I can access that mode without being on the verge of dying. Because basically, if Luffy beats Katakuri with something that he unlocks while he's on the verge of dying, or some kind of supreme hockey boost on the verge of dying, who knows if that hockey boost is, first of all, like, is it temporary or not? Because in Zoro's case against Mr. One, it was temporary, his power up. So he'll have to train to sustain that ability for a long fight, because Zoro could have easily died if Mr. One could have survived that slash. But he had supposedly no endurance. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I think of the chapter. If I had to give it a grade, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. The only thing that's kind of iffy with me is that, once again, we see just a little glimpse of the fight between Katakuri and Luffy, and I've been really wishing to see that. Also, we see what the Big Mom Pirates are doing, but we don't see any of the Vin Smoke, so maybe they'll just be there for Coco Island, but I feel like we could have seen them just a little bit. And besides that, I have no qualms with the chapter, so 9 out of 10 I think is a fair grade. And that's pretty much it. Pete the Great, signing out.